Hey everybody, welcome back to Decode Tech and another Python tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be talking about modules in Python. And a module is really just another Python file. We can then import these modules into other files and make more complicated programs with less lines of code. So these modules normally contain a collection of functions and objects, which we haven't looked at objects, but we've looked at functions. And we'll look at objects soon. And these functions and objects are closely related to solving one kind of problem. For example, whether it be networking, graphical user interfaces, or any other topic you might be interested in working on. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into VS Code and let's take a look at this. So here I have a file called test.py and I just have a print statement saying this is my current file. And then I have another Python file, which is going to be our module we're going to import. And I name the file a_module. And remember, this is just another regular Python file. And I have in here a print statement saying this is what is imported. So now if I go back to test.py and at the top, I can use the Python import keyword to import this module into my file. So I'll say import and then the name of my file. Now essentially what this import statement is saying is take whatever code is in a_module and paste it at the top of my file. So it should actually print out the print statement that's in a_module. So let's test this out. I'm going to go down to my built-in terminal. I'm going to type in Python test.py and you'll see we get 2 lines printed even though there's only one print statement in my file. And you can have multiple of these imports. Say we had another file to import, we could say import file 2, import file 3, and so on. You can import as many files as you want, but we'll stick with just our one for now. And now that we know that we're importing a module here at the top, I'm just going to rename my file to more closely relate to one specific topic. So I'm going to make a file of functions that have to do with some basic math operations. So I'm just going to rename the file to basic_math. So I'm going to hit rename. So now we see I changed the file name to basic math. Now I'm going to comment out this print statement and I'm going to define some basic math functions. And I actually already have them done down here. And I'll just uncomment them out and bring them up into view a little bit better. So I'll just bring them up. And now we have a simple add, subtract, multiply, and divide functions. All basic math functions. Now these are oversimplistic and you wouldn't normally make a function for something this simple, but I don't want you to focus on the functions, I just want you to focus on how we use this. So if I now am importing these into my test.py, notice they're only being defined over here, they're not being called. Remember, a function has to be called to run it. So if I run test.py now, we shouldn't get any output from the a_module. Speaking of which, I have to change the name from a_module to basic math because I changed the name of the file. But we still shouldn't get any extra output other than our print statement because those are just function definitions. And I commented out the print statement. So I'm going to hit enter. And sure enough, we only get the line outputted from our print statement on line 5. So now I'm going to get rid of the text in our print statement and I'm just going to call one of those functions. Let's start with add. And I'm just going to add together 4, 5. So we should get 9 as an output. Now if I come down to my terminal and I run python test.py, you'll notice I get a trace back saying a name error. And it says name add is not defined. But you might say, wait a minute, we just said we're importing basic math. But when it comes to using variable names and like function names and object names from other files, you need to specifically say where those are coming from. And we call where they're coming from their namespace. So for example, basic_math is the namespace that add is in. And so in programming, we have these namespaces, and the reason for them is so we don't have name conflicts. For example, if you had your own add function in here, it might not know whether you mean to use the add from this file or the add from the file you're importing. And note that even though we know what's coming from the basic math file, sometimes your modules will be many lines of code and you won't know what's all in there. So we came up with this idea called a namespace. So to better help you understand a namespace, try to think of it like a school with classrooms. And the school is your main file and the classrooms are modules that you've imported. So let's say if from the office of the school, you want to call a certain student from a classroom. So it's like calling a function from a module. And let's say you had 2 or 3 Bob Jones in the school. So when you call them from the school office, you can't just say, Bob Jones, please come to the office if you only want the Bob Jones that is in 2nd grade. In that case, you'd say, Bob Jones from 2nd grade, please come to the office. 2nd grade would be the namespace for Bob Jones that you want. I hope that made sense and didn't make it more confusing. So to use this add from the basic math namespace, we have to put the name of the namespace in front of it, which would be basic_math, and then use the dot operator. So we're saying basic math, go in and get me the add function. Now, I know I said earlier when you have something dot a function name, it's a method, which is a function tied to an object. Well, that's not quite the case here. In this case, we have a module with a function. So keep that in mind. The dot operator can be used in more than one situation. So I'm going to clear the terminal, and now if I run test.py again, you see we do get 9 outputted to the console, so we got what we expected. And the same goes if you want to call the multiply function. We can copy and paste down here, and now you'd have to change from add to mul, because you're still going into basic math, and now you're calling the multiply function. So I'm going to run this, and you see now we get 9 and 20. So sometimes if you have a long module name, it gets tiring putting the namespace in front of the function each time. So you can use the as keyword to shorten the name. So right after the import, you can just say as whatever you want to shorten it to. You could say something like BM for basic math. Now that's not super obvious what BM means, so that might not be a good option, but I just want you to get the point of it. So now instead of calling basic math every time before a function, we can just call BM. So I could do bm.add and bm.mul. And if I save and run, we get the same result. So we didn't add any functionality, but it's less typing as we go down the file and use more and more code from the module. So you see how this can help us make our files smaller, which is a nice benefit of using modules. It also can make our code easier to maintain, because if we find a problem, we can go to a specific module and help pinpoint where that problem is, instead of scrolling through like 1,000 lines of code that's in one main file. Also, it gives us less coding in the future because we have another file that if we want to do some basic math operations, we already have those functions defined that can help us do them, and we don't have to recode them. And the last benefit that's really great is it allows smarter people than us to make modules for complicated applications, and then we can use their modules, and even though we might not know how their function is implemented, we just know how to use it, and we can get a lot more done that way. For example, here we don't know how adding is happening behind the scenes because it's defined over here in another module. Now, it is good to know how stuff is actually working, at least to some degree, but the most important part is that you know how to use the functions to get done what you need to get done. Okay, so if you don't want to prefix your functions that you get from a modules with anything at all, if this as doesn't work for you, you can actually import them directly into your current namespace. And how we do that is we use the from keyword. So we say from the name of the module, so we use basic math again, and now we say import, and then we say exactly what we want imported, whether it be a variable name, a function name, an object name, or whatever it be. So if I want to use the add function, I can just type in import add. Now I'm going to comment out this print statement on line 7 because we're trying to use multiply, and I'm going to get rid of this top import statement. Actually, I'll just comment it out because it's not needed now. And the reason this is considered okay is because we're just importing the function we want. So even if there's a bunch of other stuff coming in from that module, it won't get into our namespace and cause name conflicts with something we define. Or at least it's a lot less likely because we can see exactly what's coming from that module. And now that it's imported directly into my namespace, I no longer need to prefix the namespace before the function. So I can get rid of BM. Now if I run python test.py, you see we do get 9 still, so that works. And if you want to do multiple functions, all you have to do is comma and the name of the function. So I could do .mul. Now I can uncomment out the print on line 7, and once again get rid of the namespace before it, and then I can run that, and we get the result we expected. So this top import, you actually have to use the namespace, whether it's shortened or not. With this from statement, you only have to import what you need, and then you don't need to use that namespace at all. Okay, so let's get rid of all this. And I told you earlier that one nice thing about modules is that it allows other smarter people to make things that are more complex into some simple functions that we can use, whether we understand how they work or not. And Python actually comes with a lot of what are called built-in modules that we can just import by default that are really useful. And Python is often referred to as batteries included because of this nice functionality of having a bunch of built-in modules. So all we have to do is say import in the name of the built-in module we want. So one of the modules that is built in is called sys. So I'm going to say import sys, and then I'm going to get rid of this code down here yet. We don't need that. And sys gives you some system functionality. Sys is short for system. And one of the things it gives us is a path of where Python looks for imports. So if you're getting import errors, this can be useful. So if I want to see that path variable from sys, I can just say print sys, the name of the namespace, dot path, the name of the variable I want. I'm going to save that and I'll run test.py. And you'll see we get these square brackets around things in quotes. So that tells us we have a Python list of strings. And these strings are file paths on our computer. And these paths are every place that Python looks for modules to import when you use import statements. Notice the very first one is your current working directory, what folder you're currently in other words. So I'm under Python tutorials, which is inside of users, decode tech, documents. And then there's some other ones here that I'll ignore. But then down here at the one that ends with lib is where I believe the built-in modules reside. And then the one with site packages is where any third-party modules reside. So even though Python comes with a lot of built-in ones, there's still times where you might want to build your own. And a lot of people have built some really helpful modules, and they can put them in a place called PyPI where people can download them and use them. And we'll look at how to install third-party packages in a future video. So I'm just going to take one of these paths and copy it. I'm going to do the third-party module one. So I'm just going to copy, go to File Explorer, and paste it in the search bar. And now notice there's double backslash between all the folders. That's because in Python here, it's inside a string, and a backslash is used for special characters, as you would have saw in my string formatting video. And so to use a path in Python with a backslash, you actually have to use another backslash to escape that first backslash. Because if you only use one backslash, Python thinks that has a special meaning. But we literally want a backslash, so you have to have two backslashes. But when you're using it in a computer, you don't want double backslash, you want just one. So I'm going to go ahead and take one out of each. And once you're done with that, you can just hit enter, and it'll take you right to that folder. Now I don't have many third-party things installed, but here you'll see one called pip. And that's actually what we'll use in the future to install third-party packages. But enough of that, I just wanted to show you what that looks like. And now I'm going to clear the screen. So one weird thing you might see sometimes on imports is you might see a dot in the middle of an import, like sys dot something. And that has to do with Python packages. That's a little bit more advanced topic. I'm not going to cover that in this video. Just thought I'd point that out if you run into that so you know what it means. But if you're just starting out, you probably won't encounter that a whole lot. And the last thing I wanted to note is if you remember when we first imported basic math, we had this print statement uncommented out, and it ran right away when we imported the file. So sometimes in your modules, you'll have code that you don't want to run if it's imported into another file. But if you're running this file directly, you want that code to run. And in our next video, I'm planning to cover exactly how you can accomplish that. So that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you like this type of content. And please leave any questions or comments in the comment section down below. And I hope to see you all in the next video.